Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been a while since I've addressed you here today, and I'm very, very pleased to be here, and I'm very pleased that to see you all here. What I want to talk to you a little bit about today is the journey that Bass has undertaken from what it used to be, which was a Gippsland Basin exploration company, which through the downturn in 2014 found itself stranded with a pretty decent acreage position, but not able to do anything with. And quietly, almost by stealth, we became a shell. And over the last 2 years, we searched high and low for some decent acreage positions that where we could rebirth bass with, at the same time looking to see whether we could actually monetise or do anything with the Gippsland Basin acreage. We looked all around Australia in the usual basins, and found it pretty difficult to do a deal that made any sense. Many of you would know that our largest shareholder was Cooper Energy, and when I joined with most of the current board, Bass back in the end of 2014, one of the things that we did talk to Cooper about was the potential for Bass to be a vehicle for its international portfolio, which, as it turned out, was a pretty decent portfolio but didn't belong in the new Cooper Energy. You'll hear from David Maxwell tomorrow. Obviously, David's transformed Cooper Energy into a pretty significant East Coast gas player with its Sole development and the other acquisitions that it's made in the Otway Basin. Ultimately, what we were able to do is we were able to secure from Cooper at very favourable terms their producing Tanggai Sukananti KSO in Indonesia. And that's been, I've been involved in that now for a year directly. We closed the transaction with Cooper in February, at the end of February this year, with an effective date of October last year, and that's been quite, it's been quite successful in bringing Bass back onto the map, and here I stand before you looking to tell you a little bit more about this and what our thoughts are in Indonesia. And I just present to you here, I'll summarise the disclaimer. It's basically, believe none of what you hear and half of what you see, and that's the way we'll start and end this disclaimer. Here's a snapshot of the company, what it looks like. We have an experienced and focused board. Many of those names will be familiar to you from various guises. Hector Gordon from recent history, Beach, and of course Cooper. Myself from Santos, Stewart, Ambassador, and now Bass. And Mark Lind, Adelaide Equity. Peter Mullins was the banker that was involved, was pivotally involved in Beach's acquisition of Delhi Petroleum all that way back. We have a tight register, and you can see from a quick examination of it, you have the board is equitised for success. And I'll just pick up a comment that Ron Prefontaine made before the break about having invested his own hard-earned money into Strata X and his other vehicles. You'll find that we've done the same, and it is actually quite it's quite laudable, and it's quite a sobering and a focusing little circumstance when you've got your own and your family's money in these situations. Why Indonesia? Well, because it's a place that's simple, it's low cost in the main, and it's profitable. What we inherited through this property here was a property that was an oil producer. It was producing variously between 300 and 500 barrels of oil a day through the last year. Before we got our hands on it, we've been able to do some work, some production optimisation work, which we've started, of which there's more to come. We've been able to get production back up to 600, and it's quite an interesting story. I'll cover the production optimisation endeavours and potential in a moment. But it's a producing and profitable field. We have a 55% interest in this KSO, and we're partnered up with with an Indonesian company that you won't have heard of. But the Indonesian component of this endeavour and the Indonesian participation in this and other properties and our potential future acquisitions is pivotal. It's pivotal to success in Indonesia. We have an experienced team in the field and in the Jakarta office, and it's noteworthy that right through from the leadership in Jakarta to the field operations, it is an entirely Indonesian team. This KSO is long life. I'll explain to you why and how that is. We have a significant period of time in which to extract hydrocarbon resources from here. We expire in 2025. And because of our position, and I'll show you more how that works a little later in the presentation, we want to leverage our position and our staff and our relationships to drive that growth. The first objective of ours in this KSO is to keep production up. And the driver of keeping this production up at this point in time for a period that could be as long as 12 months is to do all the production optimisation activities that many of us would take as as just normal course of business. This is part of the opportunity in Indonesia because these fields have come from the hands of Pertamina. I'll give you the overall look, the situational history, if you will, shortly. But these fields, in the main, became immaterial to Pertamina, and they weren't given the attention and the love that they needed, and hence that provided the opportunity. And of course, the adage there is that production optimisation barrels are the cheapest barrels you'll ever get, and of course that rings true. The production here is 600 barrels a day, as I've mentioned, and it comes from 3 wells only. So we're blessed with a field that is that's highly productive. We don't have to deal with numerous fields that have really come into surficial layers by a breach of the trap. These are more conventional style traps, and a little bit more about that. We've got two key wells that are driving our production at the moment. One is Tangai 1 and the other one is Bunyan 3. When I first went to the field, the team showed me Tangai 1. It was a well that was producing 55 barrels of oil a day, and it was slated for an artificial lift installation. And I had a bit of a look around, and because I am a Cooper Basin stalwart, I sort of took that in, and I had a look at the pressure on the wellhead, and I said to the guys, well, yeah, that's all very good that we're going to stick a pump in this well, but we've still got 160 psi on the wellhead, and the well is being choked back. So how about the first thing we do is we open the choke, and then we see what we get, and then we'll figure out whether we need a pump or not. And we did that, opened the choke, and didn't get a lot of oil, a lot of additional oil. And then the guys were telling me, well, we have a scale problem. And we cracked open the pipe, and a 4-inch pipe was down to less than an inch diameter. It was blocked by calcium carbonate scale. So we thought it might be a good idea to actually just descale it and see what we get. And we got the well back on production about a week or two later. And that 50 barrels a day, we had it open and flowing at 300 barrels of oil a day. And 300 barrels of oil a day and nearly 3,000 barrels of total fluid. And I turned over to the guys, I said, well, I guess we won't be needing that pump now, will we? So we're in the process. We've gotten half of that 300 barrels a day. We've got now we have some debottlenecking to do at the facility, and we're looking to get the other half before we're too much older. And I'll close the optimisation story by just one other. Same thing. The best well in our field is Bunyan 3. It's produced about 350,000 barrels. It's on its way to about 750,000 barrels. And we want to do something with that because I look at the choke and to be fair to the team, and we know that there's potential from that well. That well's producing with a flowing tubing head pressure of 400 psi. And so obviously, and 1,700 barrels of fluid a day. So, right now we're planning to figure out how we can actually reduce that pressure using techniques such as twinning flow lines, installing a mini facility on site. But what I'm trying to illustrate here is that there is plenty of potential out of the existing wells. The other thing we're doing this month is we're doing a campaign of workovers to repair a couple of pumps. That's the other thing you do in Indonesia, is everything you've heard about in Indonesia about the logistics is actually true. It is actually a slow place to work. What it actually means is that you need to be able to plan ahead, and if you plan ahead, you can work comfortably in that environment. But that's not something that necessarily all of us and potentially the Indonesians have been used to. They've been used to something that's a bit linear. I'll do one thing first and then go to another thing and then go to another thing. They're not used to, and I mean this with all respect, they're not used to parallel planning. If you bring parallel planning in there, you will actually be able to do some good work in good timing with good people and have success. So production optimisation is one thing, and the objective of the optimisation is to keep production at or above the existing levels for the next 6, 12 months, whatever it takes. And in the meantime, we'll be planning a drilling program. And this is what's really interesting about this block. And this block is actually not unique in Indonesia and South Sumatra where we are. The analogue I want to use here is like the Cooper Basin when the juniors came in around about the year 2000. And the Cooper Basin joint venture led by Santos had discovered that 3D seismic was the next technical breakthrough that would give the basin a kick along. And what happened here, and this is quite a similar circumstance. I'll just point out Bunyan 1. Bunyan 1 was essentially the main producer in this complex, and it was a complex that only had 2D seismic on it. And that outlier, that is a well on the flank. Bunyan 1, when the field was taken on by Cooper Energy at the time, had produced 1 million barrels of oil by itself. And Cooper did the sensible thing and basically said, well, why? The section's very thin, it's on the edge of a structure, how can that well produce 1 million barrels of oil by itself and still be going, of course? So what they did is they drew up a plan to shoot 3D seismic, shot 3D seismic, subsequently drilled Bunyan 3. Bunyan 3 came on right at the crest. It was 1,500 barrels of oil a day. I mentioned it's on its way to at least 750,000 barrels, if not more. And what we're doing right now is we're doing a fully integrated study that is going to come up with a couple of significant findings, but unfortunately for my sins, I like to read novels from the back. But Bunyan 6 and Bunyan 5 are absolute no-brainers. We're just going through the process now of doing the static modelling and the dynamic modelling to justify that, because we have to justify that to Pertamina because of the regime we're in. But it's obvious that 5 and 6 need to be drilled, and 5 and 6 with an oil in place in the Bunyan field, something north of 10 million barrels, of which something south of 2 million barrels has been recovered to date are really significant wells that will bring production up and bring the developed reserves up significantly. The other thing we're doing is we've done the same thing on Tangai 1, there's Tangai 1, the one that I mentioned we've gotten up to 150 on its way to 300. There's an up-dip well at Tangai that we'll be drilling as well. But one of the really, I mean, if Bunyan 5 and Bunyan 6 weren't exciting enough, so to speak, one of the really exciting things that we're working with right now is we've actually had a look and we've uncovered a Bunyan West, which is like a Bunyan lookalike. Now, this is in time, mind you. We've got to do the depth conversion, but they're very... time does conform reasonably well in this area to depth, and I'm working really hard. In fact, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to kill that structure. I'm trying to find reasons why it won't be there. And the way it's looking right now, that'll be something that we'll be chasing in the 2018 drilling program. It will actually increase the oil that we have at our disposal there as well. So remembering the Cooper Basin analogy, we've basically covered it with 3D. We're also bringing reasonably well-trodden optimisation and exploitation techniques into this area. There are other targets that we've identified through the 3D. I'll just mention them briefly: TMB6, Kupang updip, and Sukananti updip. But by far the most significant impact that we're going to have in this area is in those 3 development wells and that Bunyan West appraisal. And at the moment we've used, again, it's a fully Indonesian crew. Our role here in the Melbourne office, with us travelling backwards and forwards regularly, is in a leadership, strategy, QA, QC role of the work that we're doing. And UNPAD, an Indonesian crew based out of Bandung, about 80 kilometres out of Jakarta, are doing a fully integrated study, and that's coming along really well. We'll have results around about year end, which will inform our reserves and will inform our 2018 and 19 drilling programs. This is the map that really excites me, if a map can actually excite anyone. If you have a look at where we are in yellow, that's our KSO. And oops, I've done it again. The Pertamina have their base in this area of what they call Asset 2 in a place called Prabu Muli. These are all exciting and exotic places to go, by the way. But what I can tell you, Palembang, which is about 80 kilometres inland towards the coast, Palembang will be a co-host city of the Asia Pac Games in 2018. And you need a police clearance to get into Palembang, by the way. If you have a look at where we are, the address, I mean, I just couldn't be happier with the address. The other thing that you can't see from this chart is that there are a number of fields that surround our KSO that have either been issued out by Pertamina under a KSO environment or are being negotiated by others for other KSOs to be established. And we are looking at least one of these at the moment. We're in a data room, we're talking to these guys, and we really like what we see here. And the other thing we're doing is we're forming the relationships with other Indonesian local companies who are very impressed with the way that Tangai Sukananti is being run, that will want to partner up in any endeavour that they manage to free up from Pertamina. So this is a very, very exciting place to be, and we're going to leverage off the team and leverage off the relationships that we've got. So this is essentially the investment case. I've gone through all the points before. We have an asset that's producing very well at the moment. We're generating free cash flow. The free cash flow is actually paying all of the bills for us in Indonesia, all of the bills for our overheads in Melbourne, and The asset will likely be self-funding, with the last of our payments for the purchase of the asset due in December of 2018, so it's a very, very good place to be. We've got multiple low-risk opportunities, as I've shown you here, from a development perspective and an appraisal perspective. And we're leveraging off the people. It's all about the people for us. We're expecting that uplift, but the uplift is going to be managed, it's going to be project managed properly, and it'll be managed by the Indonesians themselves. And because we want to leverage off our position, we are looking for acquisition right around us, and if I showed you that previous slide, there's a lot of opportunity around us. It's actually a very, very good place to be. We do like Indonesia. I'm getting to like it more and more every day, and we expect a bright future for all. And that's me.